Hello, and welcome to True Horrors with Meg and Rachel. Every week we discuss a horror film and the true stories that inspired, influenced, or bear striking resemblance to them. Be warned for spoilers and adult themes. I'm Meg.
And I'm Rachel.
This is True Horrors. All right. Let's get it going. We are ready. And
oh man, without recording the intro each time, we are just lost.
We are. Okay, so just to give you guys some background, we have been the first 6 episodes recording live the intro. And then last time we were like, maybe we should just have a recording of the intro and just edit it in every time. And we were like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Except now we're starting cold.
Yeah.
And so it's like we weren't prepared. It's like someone put us in a room and gave us a mic and we have no idea what's about to happen.
Just so you know, that's how every day, all the time is for me. I am just never prepared for anything.
Rachel
just
constantly feels like she's just like walking into an entirely different room that like just walking onto the stage.
Yep, all the time.
I'm really excited because we did Scream this week, and I'm gonna have to give you guys a little bit of an intro before we go into this. Scream is the beginning of my favorite horror franchise of all time. I will literally defend to tooth and nail that the Scream franchise, those 4 movies, is the most well-balanced horror franchise of all time. What do I mean by that? Well, just to call ahead a little bit, even the joke that Wes Craven himself puts in this movie is that the Nightmare on Elm Street movies weren't good after the first one. Mm-hmm. I would say the super meta pre-Scream one he did was pretty good. And I say this to somebody who owns all of them. Like, I mean, I'll tell you that they aren't all, but I own them all. But I think that when it comes to the 4 Scream movies, the consistency in what they're trying to say, in the mythology, and by that I know we learn new things throughout the movies, but I mean, like, one of them doesn't have magic powers or anything. And the fact that the characters stay consistently to who they are and their relationships, like, that's why I enjoy watching them going forward. Obviously, you know, the first one is up there, and, you know, there's obviously a quality drop when you go forward. But I would say that all of the Scream movies are better than a lot of franchises' first or second attempts even. Like, I love them. I love all these characters. The OG 3, who are, of course, Dewey, Gale, and Sidney, are 3 of my favorite horror archetypes, horror characters, just badasses. So I was really excited to do this one. I wasn't sure when I wanted to come bring it out, but I've been talking to some people about the podcast, and they were talking about like how much I love Scream and how much people like Scream. So I was like, all right, let's do this. I don't think we can start anywhere but the very beginning, Rachel, which is one of the most iconic openings.
Yeah. Can we talk about what a mindfuck that had to be? Like, because I saw this, it's probably the first good horror movie I ever saw. So, like, I was pretty young. I didn't really know who Drew Barrymore was. But if I were to go into this right now, I'd be like, there's no way this bitch is dying. Like...
Also, they advertised her. If you watch the trailer or look at the poster, you would have no idea. They did that intentionally. Yeah. And Drew Barrymore was original to play Sydney's role, and then she chose to play this other role because she thought it was more of a mindfuck. And I just think that opening sequence really sets you up for what they're doing. And I think that what a lot of people have problems with in this movie is the meta factor, whereas I think that's what makes it great. Like, I think if you love horror, watching something like this and being able to feel that sense of, like, realism, because I have a problem sometimes when I watch horror movies and they do stuff or they talk about stuff and I'm like, that's like Halloween or that's like Nightmare on Elm Street, and they act like those things don't exist.
Yes.
Like,
it was like that crazy dinosaur movie that we watched and we were like, Jurassic Park clearly doesn't exist in this world, does it? Like,
yes, no, that's perfect. That's exactly what it's like. It's like we're watching it and they're like making dinosaurs and no one's like, hey, there's a whole book and movie series about why this isn't a good idea.
Although I think our theory was that they just like literally couldn't afford to say it.
So true.
What was the name of that movie? Do you remember?
I don't know. I wondered if you remembered and just wasn't saying it.
No.
But I'll make up some titles. It was called Dino Universe.
That sounds like a children's show.
It was called Jurassic Park. It was called the Pterodactyl Taylor.
I would watch that, by the way.
Finish my joke for me, Rachel.
Pterodactyl Terror.
There we go. This is somebody who named a podcast True Horrors without realizing how horrible that is to say over and over again. Like, sometimes I just don't. I have to just overall say I wrote down every single other horror movie reference.
Oh, good.
So
at one point I thought I should have done that, but I'm a lazy bitch. And I didn't.
That's why there's two of us.
Yeah.
Like, we always end up doing that. Like, I'm like, I didn't do that. And you're like, I did. Well, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Town That Dreaded Sunset, Hellraiser, Silence of the Lambs. I'm like having trouble reading my own handwriting. Psycho, Basic Instinct, and there was one more. Oh, Spit on Your Grave, and, of course, Friday the 13th.
We also see a shot of Frankenstein.
Yes, which I thought was so cool for this podcast.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we watched that.
We did.
Like, that's really cool. But I thought that was really interesting. Also, the joke that he makes, that after the first one, all of them sucked. I was like, this is why I love him. That it's such a good in-reference. Okay, there are two things this movie teaches us that we can impart upon anyone listening. Never stop running.
Yes.
And trust your instincts.
Yes. I would say... Oh, keep going. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think a big part of this movie is that we're taught, especially like teenage girls, not to trust that. Sydney knew something was wrong with that guy.
Yes.
No matter how perfect he seemed. And, just trust those instincts. Like, don't worry about like, oh, he's so nice and you're breaking his little baby heart. Like, that's, I feel like, what got her stuck in that point of like apologizing to him for having intimacy issues over her mother's brutal rape and murder. Like, unsubscribe. Not interested.
So hard. I was going to say the lesson that I learned was if you get the upper hand when you're being attacked, you just do not stop beating. Like, don't
Never
try
stop.
to run away. You make sure they are dead before you leave.
I feel like Halloween teaches us that too.
Yes,
that
for
she was always turning, which we'll discuss next week, but she was always turning her back. Spoiler. I was wondering that because I definitely watched Halloween before I watched this when I was rewatching them, and I have a lot of Halloween references that I picked up, and my biggest one is that in the very beginning, Casey's parents, the dad tells the mom, go run down to the Mackenzies. That's the name of the family that Laurie tells the kids to run to.
You know,
I thought
watched
that was
them
so smart.
In the opposite order, and I remember hearing that because I watched them the same night, but by the time I got to Halloween, I was starting to get kind of tired. So like it registered, but I didn't actually connect the two.
But I tried to write down any of the references. Like, there are some of the obvious ones, like the janitor who's dressed like Freddy. But I tried to write down any of, like, the little horror references that I felt like were in there, and that was a good one.
Billy's last name is Loomis, which is the name of the doctor in Psycho and Halloween. So, which I wrote down, like, that's cute, but it kind of threatens the fabric of the universe. And then I watched Halloween, and one of the actresses' last names is Loomis. So maybe this just is a common last name. I have literally never heard of Loomis outside of the Halloween franchise. So maybe I'm just an idiot.
Why did you think it threatened the fabric of the universe?
Because they keep referencing Halloween, but his name, like, it's like this thing exists in, like, the movie exists in the universe, but at the same time it doesn't. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a common last name that I've never heard.
Because they watch Halloween. Like, they know Halloween exists. I think it would probably be like if somebody's last name was like Carpenter.
Right.
Or something. Like, and you were just like... Which, that's something that she says also, doesn't she, at one point? Says it's a
Wes Carpenter. Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah. It was weird.
But
also to go back to...
of course.
That horrible Billy. How he is my personal nemesis. I wrote down a few things. About... Actually, what I wrote is, this motherfucker is my personal villain. And I'm so glad he dies. Because one of the first things he does is he outlines what they're going to do and then immediately tries to go for more. He's like, all right, first, second base, immediately goes for third, and then is mad when she's like, no. Like, that's not what you agreed to. And then he's like, hey, I'm not trying to pressure you. Immediately after he tries to pressure her by guilting her and then lying to her. And then, yes, he's like, you haven't been the same since your mother died. Well, bitch, no wonder. Like, of course she hasn't been the same since her mother was raped and murdered. What the hell? I hate him. And he just looks like a killer. Can we just talk about that? Like, I don't know what maybe it's just because I saw this movie when I was so young, but I look at him and I am immediately creeped out.
Is he the dad in Riverdale? Is that a joke?
No, he totally
am I
is.
making a joke? Okay.
No, he is. He grows into his face more. Like, he's not as creepy as an adult. But, like, just in this movie, I look at him and I am immediately creeped out.
All those things. I also watched this movie very young. Like, I don't remember watching this movie for the first time. And I wonder if it has something to do with, like, in the back of my mind, like, I'm like, this is something that happens. Like, he has sex with her and then is like, I killed your mother.
Yes!
It's like, wow. Talk about, like, you know, this is what they should show in schools instead of, like, if they're trying to get abstinence. Because I would just have been so freaked out. It's like... You know, maybe he'll never call you again, but it's also, it could turn out he killed your mother. Like,
it's
oh my God. It's just like, it's crazy. Also, totally different direction. But no one in this town has screens on their windows. Is that normal?
I did not notice that, but you are right. I mean, about 50% of the windows in my apartment don't have screens. But, no, it's weird.
I've never been, like, in a place that intentionally didn't have screens. It's always like, oh, the screen's broken or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I thought that was really odd. But it's the same way in other horror movies we watch.
Yeah.
That those windows don't have screens in them.
They must not live in places with bugs.
That's my thought more than anything else, is that, like, so many people have their window open and I'm like, how many bugs are getting in? I mean, yes, a serial murderer and a rapist also is getting in.
But definitely more bugs. You got to worry about that way more than you have to worry about serial killers.
This episode was sponsored by Screens, and those who make screens, get them to keep bugs and serial killers out of your apartment. Screens, like windows, but that let air in.
See, that's a good advertisement and PSA. Oh, no, wait, here's my PSA.
Oh, okay.
You have to worry about bugs more than you have to worry about serial killers. There are way more bugs than serial killers.
The more you know.
There we go.
The more you know music. Why did the principal touch her face?
I have no idea.
When that happened, I was just like, I don't think any of my principals ever touched me.
No, because by the time we were in school, it was starting to get to the point where teachers and administrators aren't allowed to touch kids. Like at this point, they're not allowed to touch them at all. But yeah, real weird.
This movie's also incredible to watch when you know the truth. Like, there's some horror movies that I feel like if you know the twist, maybe, we talked about that with Psycho, that it kind of can take away from it. But I felt like this is even more fun to watch when you know.
Right.
Like, you're just like, wow, you're the worst people. Like, you're such psychos. Mm-hmm. what does everyone in this town do for a living? Because what the fuck is up with all their houses?
I wrote that down. I said I wanted to know what the median income was in this fucking town. They are insane. Sydney is an only child. Why do they need such a big house?
It's so crazy. Also, just a call ahead thing, but who the fuck designed Stu's house? It was like designed by that Winchester woman who made all those doors. Like,
well, and I also want to know when that was built, because like we also see those like pocket doors that were really popular, like I don't know, like around in houses built around that time. Because it seems like, because when I was a kid, I know I had a friend who's like the bathroom had pocket doors on each side so that you could circle all the way around the upstairs. Mm-hmm. I think that might have been a thing at one point. I don't know why, but I guess you always have an exit point.
There were doors everywhere in that goddamn house. And then when they did a faraway shot at the end when Gail was reporting, I was like, look at this goddamn house.
Yes.
Like, not as much as Sydney's, where I was really like, what is this house? But, I guess I can just, do you have more on houses?
I was just going to say every house had too many doors. Because I wrote in all caps, too many doors after the first scene. They had way too many exterior doors.
And
I did not
windows.
like that. And windows.
Like,
the big windows were really big at that time as well. Which,
no.
And blinds. Nobody has any fucking blinds.
That's what I was gonna say.
Their curtains, like they have curtains, but they're all open. Like, oh God, I'm stressed out.
I have literally opened my blinds to this apartment. I've lived here almost 2 years. Once. Like, you can see right into my apartment. Mm-hmm. I don't like that.
No.
Like, don't look at me. Don't ever look at me.
Ever. That just goes out to everybody, and it's from both of us. Don't look at me ever.
But I was just going to say, since I mentioned Gail, this is my personal thing because Gail is probably one of my favorite horror characters of all time. I love her. And what this movie reminded me of is Into the Woods, when the witch sings about how, like, I'm not good, I'm not nice, I'm just right.
Yes.
I'm like, she is right. Cotton was innocent. Mm-hmm. Like, just because maybe her motives weren't pure, like that she also wanted to be famous and get a Pulitzer and stuff, like, she was right.
She was
right. She was right. And, like, I also love watching this because I'm like, haha, you think you're just, like, seducing the little deputy, but you're going to fall in love with him. And you're going to fucking marry him and move to this goddamn town and be his wife. You love him. Because he's a genuinely good man. Like,
he is a little jumpy to be a police officer, though. He is always waving that gun around, and he always has his finger on the trigger. I was very stressed out. It's like if I became a cop. Like, there's a reason I'm not going to be a cop. I'm a pretty jumpy person. I am not cut out for law enforcement.
Yeah, he gets more of like a steel back, no pun intended, as the movies go on. That's also something, again, not to call ahead too much to future movies, but they give him a limp moving forward. Like, he has, like, from being basically stabbed in the spine.
Right.
But I love them. And I love them so much that I don't even give a damn how cheesy it is when she's like, is that what you're looking for? And he says, my whole life. I'm like, I love them. I am so, like, they're one of my favorite OTPs as far as horror goes. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yep, you know what he has. And you think you know what's going on, Gail. You have no idea. Because, like, the fact that they kiss, I think she was charmed. I would say the moment that they kissed, and then he was like, I can't because I'm on duty.
Yeah.
Like, that he's just so noble. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, sweet baby, your sister is dead. Like,
yeah, also, his sister is so mean to him. And, like, that's got to be hard. To be like, a deputy and have your sister constantly taking you down 3 pegs. Like,
you've got big brothers. Was that the kind of little sister you were?
It's more how I am now. I wasn't really like that in high school, but
because my older brother and I are so far removed in age that it's never been like that between us. But she's probably like, you know what? You're too jumpy, Dewey. To be a
for
cop.
Real.
Her outfits were also incredible. Yes. Just incredible. So 90s. Loved everything about it. I loved that the officer said to Billy Loomis, "What are you doing with a cellular telephone?"
Yes.
You don't need to know what year something takes place. You just need to hear them say cellular telephone, and you're like, oh, okay.
I actually wrote down that I love that this takes place in a time where owning a cell phone makes you a suspect. Like, what the fuck is up with you? You've got a cell phone. Like, get out of here.
Like, what is he? Like a 90s drug dealer? Like, why does he
have a cell phone?
Like, no one else has a cell phone. But then it's like, okay, maybe it's because his dad is the rich person in town, which if that's true, what does his house look like?
Oh, God.
Also, none of their parents are ever around, which makes me think they all work and are traveling and things like that. What did I write that I thought was so funny? Because whatever I thought, I just bracketed it with LOL. Just like both times, I was just like, this is funny at the beginning and the end. Oh, it was the fact that she thinks she's seducing him, but she's really falling in love with him. And I was like, you have no idea. I love that in movies and shows. Yes. You know that. I love watching them in, old episodes and being like, you have no idea what's about to happen to you.
Yeah.
Also, those horrible girls in the bathroom. Yeah. Those horrible girls in the bathroom. Yes. That's how people talk. Like, not to pull references, but in my hometown, there was a girl missing and she was found just this week. Mm-hmm. And I knew people who knew her on Facebook and things like that. And people would comment, not anyone I knew, but speculating on basically stuff like that, like saying stuff like that. And I'm like, that's the way people act. Like, for some reason, people being victims of the kind of trauma that Sydney was, it brings these people out to say things that have no context, like no real evidence for, but being like, I think she made it up, or I think she did this, or I think, and like, it's really staggering, just like the lack of empathy that I felt like that's so real and was such a real moment.
Yes. Well, and it's because like you want to believe that would never happen to you. And it's the same reason that people go back to the, like, what was she wearing? Or you should have had your keys between your fingers or something like that. Like, because if you made a mistake, I won't make that mistake, and therefore this will never happen to me. Because it's really hard to cope with the reality that we don't live in a just world. Sometimes random shit happens. Sometimes you get attacked. Like, and that sucks. And that's why I'm terrified all the time.
For real. Oh, yes. For real, though. My favorite line of anything is "fuck you both." And when she locks them both out, I'm like, me.
Yes.
Like,
perfect.
Sydney makes so many smart decisions in this movie. A lot of the characters do, though. Like, that's what I think I like about it, too, is that there isn't a lot of, like, you can nitpick them. But, like, there isn't a lot of really stupid things that get done. It's more like they don't know what we know. So it seems stupid. But, no, when she was just like, nope, to hell with you both. Like, we're just gonna... Like, I was like, good.
This is the exact right choice.
When she also... Runner-up is when she calls him a mama's boy. She just gave zero fucks, and I really appreciated that. I appreciate that through all of them.
Yes. My favorite line is, I'm sorry that my traumatized life is an inconvenience to your perfect existence. Followed quickly by, Billy and his penis don't deserve you. Those are just iconic.
I think we've both really showed our brand by the two ones we picked.
Yeah, that's real.
But yeah, no, when she's like, you gotta find me first, you pansy-ass mama's boy, I'm like, yes. The only other thing I wrote down is when my sister and I were young, we used to watch this show called Rescue 911. And it's like what it sounds. It followed 911 people, ambulance driving people. And it was the kind of show where no one ever died. Like, they always got you. So, like, it was that kind. But there was an episode, and this was pre-sensors on garage doors. Just like I'm guessing what this movie takes place. Like, nowadays, a lot of times you have sensors, so the garage door detects if something. It wouldn't do that. But it makes me think of the episode of Rescue 911 because it came down and crushed a child.
Oh, God.
And, like, a little bitty child. And she lives because it's Rescue 911. But right. I always think about that where I'm like, yeah, we stopped having that be a thing by creating sensors that would not let it operate. But yeah, not a great way to die. But she fought too, like they all did.
Yeah, she did great.
They all did great. They were just, and
that's why I say you got to make sure they're dead, because she's like, he's down, I can get away. No, make sure they're dead and then get away. Mm-hmm. Like, but I get it. Like, I get it. Also, I just have a couple of other comments.
Do it.
One is the timing of the curfew is weird to me because we know it gets dark at 7:30. Why do they have a 9 o'clock curfew? And they have a 9 o'clock curfew, but all those stores seem to be closing at 4:30 in the afternoon. Like, so I just have questions about that.
I would also have questions because it seems like there's the curfew, but like no one seems to care because when they find out the principal is dead, which is well past because we know that just a couple minutes, within the hour, Billy Loomis and them reveal themselves and say it's after midnight, and they were just driving around. So like, what exactly is the law enforcement of this town?
Dude.
What else?
So here's the thing. Having sex in someone else's bed is one thing. I draw the line at using their hairbrush. Sydney, put that hairbrush down. That is not okay. You can change the sheets. It's harder to clean a hairbrush.
We found the line for Rachel. This is also a reference.
That's one of the lines. I have many lines.
Also a reference to a long, extended conversation Rachel and I have had over the years over the fact that I have a real hard problem with the idea of people having sex in other people's beds. I don't even care.
I don't like that either.
Do it.
I don't like that either, but I was like, you know what? I knew that was going to happen. But the hairbrush, that just really broke me this time around. I did not like that at all. The other thing is, so we've talked about these fucking houses, but also Stu's parents own a boat because Sydney falls onto it. And then she runs to the fence and is able to, even though she is injured, just rip it apart. They need to prioritize the way they spend their money. That boat is not as important as making sure your fence is not broken.
I would agree with that, except for one comment, which is that they say, Gail says at the end it's an old farmhouse. So I wonder if that fence is from back when it was an actual farm. And so they're not actually trying to keep, like, I thought it looked dilapidated. Yeah. So I thought maybe it was from when it used to be a farm and keep animals in, and they were just like, to hell with it. They should still get rid of it because that could be dangerous. But where is Woodsville supposed to, I
don't know.
Because I thought
I'm going to start a town and name it Woodsville. It is going to be in the desert, just so you know.
I thought it was in Illinois. Am I wrong?
I have no idea.
No, I'm just wondering why they have a boat. Because we never see water. Like, how far? It wasn't that big. You think you would keep it at the dock or something. But maybe they're going up north. I mean, now that I do say that, in Wisconsin, there are people who own boats, and then they take their boats up to, like, the lake and things like that. Like, that's something people do. So I do retract that comment. But your son's still a murderer.
Yeah, because it's not a yacht. It's a pretty small boat.
Yeah.
So it's probably easier to store, like... I don't know anything about boats. I'm landlocked. I have a river. Like,
I just know that quote where a friend of mine were talking about. There's some quote where it's like, a cocaine addiction is God's way of telling you have too much money, and he made the joke. Owning a boat is God's way of telling you have too much money. That's because fair. Of how expensive and money draining boats are. Mm-hmm.
That's fair, but I also
was not brought to you by boats.
I disagree. I've always wanted a friend with a boat.
But you don't want to own it.
God, no, I don't want to own the boat.
Okay, then you don't disagree.
Well, I still want to be friends with someone who has too much money.
Any other notes?
Nope.
My only other last note is that I want Tatum's car.
Yes. Well, I always used to want a Volkswagen Beetle, but now I have a Greyhound, so I don't think I should get one.
Are they not good for greyhounds?
It's a coupe, and they're small. So, I think I need a slightly larger car.
I still really want a Volkswagen. I have no dogs, and I think they're so cute.
They're super cute.
I mean, I don't want to ever own a car, but if I'm, for whatever reason, forced to own a car, it'll be a Bug.
Good choice.
All right. Let's do this.
Wait, we got to do Would We Survive?
Oh, you're
Shit,
right.
what's our scale again?
No, I got it this time.
Okay,
I
good.
got it on lock.
Good.
10 means... Oh, damn it. Okay, you know what? We're just going to say 10 means that you would survive, and 1 means you would die.
Okay. So now, I have a question. Is this the teenage version of me, since they're all teenagers? So, but not me, transformed into a teenager.
No.
That's a bummer.
This is 17-year-old Rachel.
Oh, fuck.
And you have to think you're friends with them. You can't be so this is your group of friends.
Right. I don't know, man. Because I was not super great at following the rules when I was 17.
We'll just leave it at that. I was very good at following the rules when I was 17, if we're bringing it back to that age. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, but I don't really know, because I do think at 17, I probably wouldn't have gone to the party.
Yeah.
I
definitely would have gone to the party.
And so that's probably why, if they'd caught me, I don't think I would have done better at 17 than Casey did. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would have done better than she did. But everyone else was basically killed at the party, except the principal. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have been, if we had a situation in town, I would not have gone to the party. I would have been home with my parents. So, in that way, I would probably say I literally just forgot what the scale was. I think
1 is die, 10 is live.
Then I would probably say an 8, 9-ish. Mm-hmm. I think Casey was targeted because her and her boyfriend were super popular. Even if I was in that friend group, I wouldn't have been I would have been more like Tatum.
Well, also she's Stu's ex.
Right.
So he had a little bit of an axe to grind.
He had a little bit, and she did dump him for Steve, even though he lied and said, yeah, okay, yes. Okay, so I would probably say 9.
I just want to make it clear I would not have been friends with these people. Stu is an idiot. But
you did have a group of friends that did things.
Yes. Well, I jumped around between friend groups, and some of them did, some of them didn't. But yeah, I probably would have gone to the party because I didn't get invited to a ton of parties. So I wanted to go when they happened.
Okay, so two questions to help you determine.
Okay.
Knowing everything that was going on, would 17-year-old Rachie have wandered off alone?
No.
Would you have left the party to go see the principal hanging?
Hell no, I do not want to see dead people.
So you probably would have stuck around with Stu, or with... No,
Randy.
Not Stu. Randy to see the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But actually, no one died after that point, except the killers.
Right.
So, somewhere in the middle for you?
I was going to say maybe a solid 5.
Solid 5. I appreciate that. Appreciate that honesty.
Yeah.
Ready to hear a story?
Oh, yeah. It's a bummer.
She's already giving you guys spoilers for my own story.
Well, because this isn't,
but
this is not the first time I've heard this.
No, but it's not as much of a bummer. Also, I don't know if we've ever said this because I've stopped being able to remember everything on these podcasts already. I don't know how people who go into the 50s or above remember anything they've ever said. But these are meant to be a little bit of a taste. You talk about the movie and then we talk about the inspiration, but as far as more of a deep dive, there are so many great documentaries, so many great podcasts, so many great books about a lot of these killers. But we are in no way intending to be exhaustive. We're in no way it's just, let's talk about this movie and let's kind of get a taste of what the inspiration was. But I just want to say that, especially for this one, because I know I've seen documentaries and heard podcasts that have just done a lot of justice to what I'm about to talk about, which if you have a little bit of that kind of background, is the Gainesville Ripper. So I just wanted to say that part of it, which I'm not sure if we ever have before, but I would think you would kind of know, like, if you're looking for more like extensive true crime, great podcasts out there for that.
Oh, yeah.
We're more focused on the movie.
Oh, for sure.
But I'm going to try to do this a little bit cinematically, since a lot of people probably do know it. So it's August 24th, 1990.
Ugh.
I am not born yet.
Nope.
My mother is pregnant with me, as I am born in 1990.
August.
Rachel's doing math to see if she's been conceived.
Yeah, but my mom might not know she's pregnant yet.
Oh, wow. So we've got Mama Rachel out there not knowing that she's pregnant, and we've got my mom out there just like
ready to pop.
Yeah, being 7 months pregnant, just adding that there. So it's August 24th, 1990, and a man enters the apartment of college students Sonia Larson and Christina Powell. They are 18 and 17 respectively. And he sees that Powell is asleep on the couch, and he stands over her and then decides to go upstairs where Sonia is. He attacks her, and he stabs her, and she fights, but he kills her. And I'm not sure if at this point he poses the body. I believe at this point is when he goes down. He duct tapes her mouth. This is Powell's mouth. And when she wakes up, he ties her hands behind her back. He rapes her. And then he makes her lay face down on the floor, and he stabs her in the back. Both bodies are posed.
Can we talk about how awful it is when they pose bodies?
We're just getting to the tip of the iceberg of how awful his body posing is. But yeah.
Just like in general, please don't do that.
It's both. I think we talked about this in one of yours, that you're horrifying the people who are going to find them. Like, it's an extra level of horror. It's an extra level of just being an awful human being, like beyond even just the rape and murder and mutilation. But this guy does that. And then on August 25th, this is just the next day, he attacks 18-year-old Krista Hoyt. He broke into her apartment by using a screwdriver he jimmied open the sliding door.
Ugh, I hate sliding doors.
My father's biggest fear in life, I felt like, was that somebody was going to come through. We had sliding doors in my childhood home, and we had sliding doors in the apartment my parents downsized to. He was always like, make sure that thing is in the door, to make sure you can't pull it open. And she's not there. He had been spying on her through the window, and she's not there. So he waits for her till she comes home at 11 p.m. And then he comes up behind her and chokes her. And then it's the same routine. He cuts off her clothes. He ties her. He rapes her and stabs her. And then she's posed sitting on her bed. He decapitates her, puts her head on the shelf facing her body, cuts her down her chest all the way to the pubic bone, and cuts off her nipples and puts them beside her. There's nothing to say to that.
No, there isn't.
There isn't. I'm just going to transfer into the parents of his two first victims. They're the ones who alert people because they haven't been calling them back, and they know something's wrong.
Okay.
So by this time, people start figuring it out that something's going on. But on August 27th, so this is all in a 3 to 4 day span, he breaks into the apartment of roommates, Manuel, and I'm so sorry about this, but Tabadoa. Do not think that's right. And Chasey Pauls. So you can see why I was like, they're both 23. He breaks in, and he ends up being the only man in this spree that he kills. All of the women are petite brunettes, but this ends up being the only man, and he just kills him and doesn't pose Pose's body. But he fights back, and Tracy hears, and she tries to barricade herself. But he breaks through, and he murders her. So while this is all happening, because I said this was inspiration for Scream, and one of the reasons I think that is beyond the stabbing is the town basically lost their mind. And I mean, understandably,
right?
But this was a very short timeline. This was a lot of young people dead in a very brutal way, bodies posed and mutilated and raped.
Right.
And deadbolt and gun sales skyrocketed. People started sleeping in like mass groups out of fear. A lot of people dropped out of school because these were all college students. 4 went to the University of Florida. 1 went to Santa Fe College. And there were also rumors. There were a lot of rumors that there were more deaths, and the police were hiding them to stop mass panic. So there were also some men who came very close to being scapegoated for this, based on past mental health issues. And, you know, one particularly just because like his face had scarring on it and he looked kind of scary, which is all stuff that tends to happen and is very sad. But a lot of students just never came back. I read somewhere, and I couldn't find a second source. Most of this came from articles on Murderpedia. I forgot Murderpedia existed, and then was reminded earlier this week and was like, oh God, Murderpedia.
Right.
But I couldn't find more evidence to this, but one of the articles that I found on Murderpedia, which was talking about the case, said that before this, Gainesville had been in like the top 20 for places to live.
Yeah. I've heard that.
And so this was like a real, just like blindsiding. So on September 7th.
I would like to point out, even if you lived in New York City, this would be crazy.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of crime in New York, but it is not like this.
Yeah. No, I agree.
There's a lot of crime in New York because there are a lot of people in New York. But yeah, I would lose my damn mind because this shit just doesn't happen that often. And when it does, you have a right to lose your goddamn mind.
Oh, totally. Like, and I also would have like left school.
Especially
since I am a brunette. Like, I'd have been like, bye. But it also happened so quickly that they hadn't even found the first 2 victims before the third was killed. But on September 7th, a man was arrested for a burglary outside of Gainesville in Ocala is how I think that's pronounced, and it probably is not. No. Ocala.
Sounds right.
Sounds right. This man who was arrested was the Gainesville Ripper. His name is Danny Rolling.
I love how there was no fanfare with that. I'm like, this is the guy. We're done here.
You know how I feel about that. I have long felt like I don't want to repeat or say the names of killers just in my natural life. I hate that. I hate the amount of publicity they get, and I especially hate it in this case, and spoiler alert, one of the things he said at his motives is he wanted to become a superstar like Ted Bundy. So I will not be saying his name again.
Cool.
That's
also my philosophy, by the way. I'll be like, I'll use this guy's name one time, and then it is he for the rest of the time we're talking about this.
I'm going to be saying the murderer.
Nice. I like that.
So the murderer was born on May 26, 1954. Just to give you some background, he came from a father who was a police officer and extremely abusive.
Okay.
And his mother tried to leave his father, and it just never took. There was one note. I found an article that was really bizarre. It was that they interviewed his mother for court TV, and in the interview, you could hear his father yelling in the background, yelling at her. Like, I'm like, you're on TV, bro. He was born in Louisiana, and he had, in his earlier life, arrests for robbery and for watching women undress, which always is a precursor.
Always,
like,
always.
Something. Like, I really hope we're past the point where someone looking in on a woman when they're undressing is seen as just like, oh, boys will be boys.
Yeah.
Because you look at these and it starts somewhere. And that's a lack of consent, a lack of respect, a dehumanizing thing. And
especially now, it's not like there aren't outlets for that. The internet exists. Like, there are plenty of people who will do it with consent. Like, not okay.
So they arrest him for these burglaries, and they look at his toolkit, and it resembles the tools. It was like a screwdriver and this knife, this very specific knife, which I wrote down somewhere. And they were like, hey, Gainesville, I think we got your guy. And they did. And they went and they raided his camp. Like, he just had, like, he didn't live in a house. He, like, lived in a little area.
No.
And he had audio diaries. And that's the end of that. So
I'm so glad that serial killers have that compulsion to document what they do. It just makes things easier for the police.
It really does, though.
Like, also horrified that they do it because people have to listen to that, but thank God at the same time.
So he went to trial in 1994, but before the trial could begin, he pled guilty. It was really unexpected, and he got the death penalty. And I found so many. He was put to death on the 25th of October, 2006.
Okay.
So just to give a little bit of context, this was right after my 16th birthday, and all of this started before I was even born. So he was in jail for, and I found so many interesting things, because apparently, if you've never focused a lot on the death penalty beyond when it comes up for people who are believed to be innocent, it's very interesting what happens all around a death penalty case, even when you know the person is guilty. Like, there are certain people who they're protesting the death penalty purely on principle. And so they don't care if the person's guilty of sin. They're just saying we shouldn't kill people.
Right.
And I'm not really getting into that debate now. It's more that this brought out a lot of people. It brought out people who were saying that he shouldn't be put to death. And it brought out a lot of people who were just like, yeah. And there were also people interviewed who said, most of the time, I don't believe in the death penalty, but he needs to die. All of the families had representatives when he was put to death. And a lot of them had stuff to say. And I'm more on that because I think sometimes in our society, we hold up too much of this idea that, like, a true pure person just, forgives or doesn't have anger in their heart. And I think that's weird and judgmental. Like, and so all of these people were just like, yeah, I'm glad he died. It should have been worse for him. He should have had to do what he did to our girls and Manuel, of course. And I was just like, yeah, I think that's just as valid. I think it's just as valid, and it's about you, and the idea that, like, somehow you're more pure or above it if you're like, oh, I forgive. I just don't believe that. I think that's a personal choice. And they were all like, good. Now we can finally move on. And I think that's just as valid of a belief. But are you ready for the plot twist?
Yes.
So there was a triple homicide over a year before these murders took place. And it was in his hometown before he left it. And the police were like, you did this. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, no idea what you're talking about. But he gave his spiritual advisor a confession to it before he died, before he was put to death. So just to talk about that a little bit, this happened in 1989 in Shreveport. I don't think I ever said the city. Shreveport, Louisiana, November 4th, 1989. He killed a man, his daughter, and his grandson.
Oh, God.
William Grissom, Julie Grissom, and Shane Grissom. 55, 24, and 8 years old. The reason that they felt like he had done it is because Julie was raped and posed.
Gross.
So, and the body cleaned, which I had a hard time figuring out if he did that with all of them, because there was so much for information, but he definitely did for some of them. He cleaned the bodies and then posed them. So that meant that case was solved. And they had some proof. He was never charged, but they had some proof. I read, they had some DNA. So this case inspired Scream for obvious reasons. One of them being the idea of the small town and what happens. And I think you saw some of that when you saw them closing down all the places for curfew. And I can understand why people were angry. One of the people who was interviewed, they were children when it had happened, but they'd come to stand outside while he was executed. And it was basically the idea that he destroyed their town.
Right.
That everything that people had felt, that they'd felt safe. And I think that's where a lot of the anger, beyond even the horrible things that they do to individuals, it's that people like this tend to take the whole town with them, like in a respect at least. So that is the Gainesville Ripper and his eight victims. I don't know why that took me a second. 8 victims that we knew about. They did also make a note that at one point he tried to murder his father.
Well,
and I was like,
I don't
really care about that much. Like I'm not as interested. But one thing, and I didn't write down the whole quote, but a mother of one of the victims was saying how he got more decency than he showed his victims and more respect even after death with his body than he showed his victims, which is true. That is and true. Very sad. So, all right, what I think for me the Gainesville Ripper is a lot scarier than those punks. But I think what's even weirder is that he gave them in Scream a real motive. Like he gave them real motive. He really didn't have a motive.
No.
Like other than being like a superstar. He did try to say at one point he had multiple personalities.
Oh, I hate that shit.
But I didn't bring that up in the front because no.
No, you don't. You have one personality and it's very shitty.
There were a lot of people who felt like he shouldn't be put to death because of the abuse he suffered. That like he...
Not an argument.
That he had, that he wasn't, it was just like a whole thing. And I was reading it and I was just like, I don't have the power to care about this. He's dead. Yeah. And I don't
that's real. Here's the thing. I don't care that he's dead.
No.
That's not a comment on my opinion on the death penalty. It's just, I don't care that he's dead.
No.
All the serial killers who have been executed, I don't care. They're dead.
No. The only good
argument... I was just going to say, because it has to be said, I don't care how abused he was. Most people who are abused do not go on to do shit like that. That is not an argument.
If that's still something that needs to be said, I will say it as well.
I'm going to say it every single time it ever comes up.
That there are so many people who grow up in abusive homes and they do not continue that cycle of violence.
Nope.
And they do not become abusers or murderers. And so the idea that is somehow a given or somehow something that is excusable, like that's just not the case.
Nope.
And if you're being abused by someone who was previously abused, it's not okay for them to be treating you a certain way because of the way they, like, in no way. Okay, so this is the problem with this podcast. We have a lot of fun talking about them, and then we always end on such a bummer. We need to find a way. We need to find something. We need to find something to do at the end that is something to bring it back. Maybe we should hold back one thing about the movie every time. Maybe
good idea.
We'll think. We're going to think on this, guys. We're going to think of a theme, and the theme will be okay. In every movie, we pick our 2 favorite lines or something. And then we end on that so that we're ending on something that is not such a damn bummer.
We could also end on Would You Survive the Movie?
We do end on that, but end on Would You Survive the Movie?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. That almost feels kind of flippant. Like, I don't know.
Yes, that's why I'm saying. But, I would definitely say
the movie is super fun. The crime is a super bummer.
Exactly, and I think that's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and there's never any, like, closure for anything like that. Like, horrible things happen, deal with it.
No,
maybe that's how we should end it.
No. The bum me out, let alone the audience. I mean, and we kind of have like our lessons from the movie, but I almost don't think that's as much. That's still kind of a bummer. Like trust your instincts. And what was our other one? Oh, keep running and keep fighting.
Keep running or make sure they're dead.
Yeah, that's
depends on what your body tells you to do. Your body might say run, and that's fine. Just don't stop.
Trust your body, trust your instincts. We kind of already said it, but next week we'll be doing
Halloween. 1978, not the Rob Zombie.
Oh God, do we even have to say that?
I just want to make sure. I don't ever want anyone to think that I've even seen the Rob Zombie remake.
Ouch. I mean, I haven't seen it either, but
I've seen the opening scene, and that's how I know it's not worth watching.
Oh, so true. But we're going to see that next time. So, stay safe, stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and get screens for your windows.
And if someone keeps pressuring you to have sex, even though you've been traumatized, just punch him in the face and never speak to him again.
Or even
I'm saying him because it's probably a man, right?
Or even if they're pressuring you at all, don't let anyone ever pressure you to do that. And don't let them do that sneaky thing where they're not like, it's like he was doing the soft pressure. Like, oh, I don't mean to pressure you, but everything you did before was pressuring. Don't let them do that either.
Don't put up with that shit.
No, you don't owe anyone sex ever.
Nope.
At any time.
Nope.
What is the theme of this podcast? What is it we're trying? Where it's like it's both it's advice and horror movies. We're just like telling you that. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.